Not bad, not bad. Once our structure is in place, so essentially once we have tested everything and we get back our dummy strings, now let's finally set up our first model, which is going to be a user model, which we're going to use in order to register, in order to log in, and also in our application when we're setting up a new job. And we're going to do that by creating models folder in the root. So again, we're talking about in here in the server. Then we want to create user.js and we want to set up the schema. So remember, we need to import Mongoose and all that cool stuff. Now, as far as the properties, we're going to go with name, email, password, last name, and location. And for time being, you can set them up all as strings. And I didn't add here export and set up the model because, again, at this point, it's somewhat self-explanatory. So let's start working on that. And then once I get to the properties, I'll show you what other things that I want to add here when we're setting them up. And in my case, I'm going to go to a sidebar here. I'll say new folder, and I'm looking for models. And then inside of the folder, we want to create a new one. Let me zoom in here, new file, and I'm going to go with user.js. Now we need to start by getting the Mongoose. That is coming from our package, correct? From, and then Mongoose module. Now, once this is in place, then we want to create that schema, basically a structure for our user. And we're going to do that in the following way. We'll go with user schema, and that is equal to new Mongoose, and then schema. And once I have my schema, then let's just set up those properties one by one. So I'll go here with name, like I said, type will be a string one. Now, what other properties we want to add here? Well, for sure, I want to set it up as required. So let's go here with required, and I'm going to go with my custom message. So I'll pass in the array. I'll say true, and then we're going to go with please provide name. Please provide and then a name. Let's save this one. And I also want to add min length and max length. As far as min length, I think I'm going to go with 3, and then the max length will be equal to 20. And lastly, I also want to trim it any extra space from the start or the end. So I'm going to go here with true. So once we have this one in place, we can pretty much copy and paste this one. I want to say 4 times, but let's just start with 1 and then we'll see what happens. So in here, I'm going to go with email. The type still will be string. Now, as far as the required, yep, that still will be the case. But in this case, we're going to be looking for email. So I'll say, please provide email. Now, min length and max length, I don't think I'm going to use these ones. And I'm also not going to trim it. But I do want to set it up as unique, though. So I'm going to go with unique true. Just keep in mind that this is not technically a validator, but it will ensure that user can only sign up with an email that is not already in the use. But I'll also show you how we can do that in the controller. So I'll show you 2 options. I'll show you how we can check that right away in controller if the user is trying to sign up with an email that is already in use. But keep in mind that we also have this option in the Mongoose, but technically this is not a validator. It is just using the indexing to make sure that only unique emails are accepted. And then in the next video, I'll set up the validator, because if you watch the Node Express project, you know that we were using the regex. In this case, I'll show you a package that nicely validates emails and many other things for us. So type string, required true, and also unique true. Then when it comes to a password, let's just copy and paste here. Let's say that the name will be password in this case. Then type string, required true. So this one stays the same, password. And then it's not going to be unique, but I do want to add a min length. So I'll say min length, and that is equal to 6. Then we have last name, which, to tell you honestly, we're not going to use it in the application. It's just there to kind of give it a more real life feel to the application. That's it. Pretty much it's going to be in our profile last name, and we're not going to ask it when we're signing up. So basically, when you'll sign up, there's going to be some kind of default value. And then if you want in the application, you can change it. So by default, it's going to be a last name. So let's try that one out. I think I'm going to go with name in this case. So let me copy this one. And then right after the password, we'll set this one up. We'll say last name. It's going to be type string. It's not going to be required. And I will trim it. So let me move this one up. And then max length. Yep. I think it can stay with 20, but let's also add a default. And let's say last name or Smith or whatever you want. So in my case, I'm going to go with last name like so. Let's save that one. And then last one is going to be location, which is, again, going to be interesting where we're not going to ask for it when we're registering. However, in the application, notice there is this profile page where you can change that value. And then we'll use that location in order to add a job. Because the assumption is that most jobs, most likely, you'll apply in your local area. So it kind of makes sense that this one is already filled out. And if you want to change this, basically, if you're applying to some kind of job that is outside of your area, then you can always edit that over here. Or once you move, you can actually change the location altogether. Hopefully that makes sense. And then let me grab this one, the last name, and we'll just rename it. So I'll say here, location. And then we're going to go type string, trim true, max length, same 20, and default will be my city. That's it. That's all we want to do for now. And then once we have all of this in place, then we can just go with export default. So export default. And then remember, we want to set up the model, correct? So we have our schema, we have the structure. Now let's set up our model. And the way we do that, we go with Mongoose model. And then the first thing is the name. So in my case, I'm going to go with user, which will create that users collection in the MongoDB. And then we're going to go with user schema. And with this in place, now we can set up the validator for the email.